We can start.
Yeah, hello, viewers. Welcome to KDRTV live show today. This is Dr. Jeremiah Okali coming live again from Minneapolis. So delighted to have you back on the program as promised from last week. Today we'll continue a conversation as we promised, and we'll be talking about mental health, particularly among us African immigrant men here in the United States. As promised last week, we are very honored to have some of the most respectable members of the African community here in the United States, and also one of us joining us from Africa. Again, I also want to welcome our viewers from the international scene, particularly those ones watching from the UK, those ones watching from Kenya, those ones watching Uganda, Zambia, Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana, of course, Liberia, and the Ivory Coast. So welcome, and very quickly, I'm going to introduce to you the panelists for today. Happy to welcome back again to the show one of the most respectable members of the African diaspora community, particularly here in the upper Midwest, Minneapolis, Dr. Richard Oni. Dr. Richard Oni, you saw him in the last segment. He was an extremely knowledgeable man. He has a doctorate in health and human service administration. He's a licensed social worker. He's also the executive director of the Progressive Individual Resources, which provides cultural diversity training and staff development to agencies working with families from diverse cultural backgrounds. Dr. Oni has offered numerous presentations and workshops, has taught in various universities, and of course has had several awards, including the NAMI Presentation Award. Also, Dr. Oni is a native, he comes from Nigeria. Also honored today to welcome a new member in our panel, a very, very knowledgeable man, Mr. Oduwa Aganmoni. I think for those ones in the upper Midwest, by now you should be knowing him. He's a politician, but also very knowledgeable in this area. He's the Director of Client Services at Covenant Human Services. He's also a mental health expert for people with different level mental challenges, and he's done this for quite a long time, over 15 years, really very knowledgeable in this particular subject. He also serves as a member and co-chair of the Hennepin County, Minnesota Advisory Board. He's also a member of the African Community Mental Health Initiative Services. So definitely we're going to have a lot of information from him today. Also honored to have on the show is a very friendly man who I think most of the immigrants in the upper Midwest here in Minnesota will definitely know him, Sam Mwangi. Sam Mwangi is the executive director of the Global Fatherhood Foundation. He's also a member of 4 different respectable organizations here in Minnesota, which includes Enoka Hennepin School Foundation, Metropolitan University Foundation, Wailancho Foundation, and HCCC. He's also a certified practitioner with the Florida Fire Clients Association. For those ones who know him, obviously is going to be very knowledgeable in this discussion. In addition to that, we all know him as an entrepreneur, a father, and a very respectable husband. And also joining us today is Dr. Gibson, my good friend, Dr. John Gibson Kikpo. Is the director of Graduate School of Education Administration and Supervision at the University of Liberia. He's also he's been in the United States for quite a long time. Also, was director of mentor programs at AMS Inc. Also, he was assistant mental health program director for Northeastern House in St. Anthony, Minnesota. Dr. John Gibson is joining us live from Monrovia in Liberia. Welcome all gentlemen to the show. So as we promised our viewers from last week's conversation, it's an interesting subject that we're going to get into today, more especially for the fact that mental health among us, the African communities, particularly the immigrants in the United States, is a subject that we've been a bit skeptical about. But the reality will tell us that really this is a problem that we need to address sooner than later. And again, as we get into the discussion, we want to acknowledge that not all is bad in the community. We have massive successes, but at the same time, we have noticeable different problems that we really need to address. So we're going to start this conversation here, and I'm going to bring in Dr. Oni, who has been here in the show before. And Dr. Oni, I'm going to bring you here, and I'm going to quote your own words as we start this conversation. In your interview with Big Glow Foundation, you said, there is a stigma associated with mental illness in many African countries. People attribute it to superficial forces, to witchcraft or punishment. They think it's incurable. People are so afraid of being considered crazy that if they do not notice symptoms, they will usually try to hide them. We have to disarm perception so that people can get well. So, Dr. Oni, let's begin with you. First, put this in context because you're an expert in this area. Put this in context so that we really have a good understanding of what it is, and then why we should care about mental health or mental illness in that case. Dr. Oni.
Thank you very, very much. I didn't know you went to look for my quotation somewhere, but it is very interesting to talk about this topic because I look at it in different ways. First of all, a lot of us look at mental health and mental illness as the same, but they are not the same. So a lot of time we need to differentiate that. What is really mental health? A lot of definitions were given to mental health. Some said it's absence of mental problems. Some people define it as an illness that is really invisible. And some people define mental illness as something that is difficult to really relate to. And so as we distance from COVID-19, we also distance ourselves from people with mental illness. So there's social distancing there. So when it comes to African, the way we look at it, we have to look at the context, the contextuality of mental illness, as well as historical aspect of mental illness. In the context of Africans, we look at it as nothing happens without something. So we look at when you are sick, that someone caused you to be sick. And we look at it in that context, and so we pay little or no attention to treatment. We go back and look at our spiritual and traditional way of healing. So that's the context in which we look at mental illness. And that is why we deny it completely, because we do not believe that is something that is illness. We also look at it as a historical aspect of mental illness. Back home, many of us, including myself, we've witnessed people who have suffering from mental illness. When they stone you on the street, you take stone too and throw them. And you look at it as a form of entertainment. You follow them around and you think what they are doing, they understand it. And they did not. And so from that historical aspect, when we all came here as diaspora and we are talking about mental illness, it's very foreign to us in the way that the traditional healing in America will look at it. Now, when you look at mental health is just for everyone. We all have mental health, but we do not all have mental illness. When you talk about mental health, that is the good aspect of mental health, meaning you are able to cope with your day-to-day activities, you are able to deal with distresses, you are able to go to work and interact well with people. That tells you that you are capable, you are able to do things in an ordinary way. Now, when you talk about mental illness, that is when you are unable to cope well. Every little thing can turn you off, and it's because you are suffering from mental illness. What are those mental illness signs? Sometimes you are very anxious. Like today now, whatever is going on, during this time when we are doing this technology, I was getting anxious. Anxiety is provoking. So certain things keep you going. And so when we look at mental health, we get to look at it in an holistic way, not just one thing that causes mental illness. We have to look at the broader aspect of it. How are you coping? What are you dealing with every day? Now, we all have some form of, some day you say you have a blue day, meaning you are not yourself. Some people will say, I'm just not myself today. What does that really mean? That means you are not able to do things the way you usually do it. That is not really mental illness. That is the same thing that someday you just say, I'm not feeling good, but I'm not sick. What does that really mean? People will say things, I'm not feeling well, but yet I'm not sick. So what are you then? That is the same thing when you look at mental health. Don't look at it that, I'm psychotic, I'm episodic about something. No. So we look at mental health as something that is good. World Health Organization said, without mental health, there's no health. So that means we cannot hide our mental illness or mental health issues. We need to know that there are days that you just not yourself. There are days you just get up in the morning, you don't feel like doing anything. That doesn't mean you are mentally ill. But that is one of those things that people look at. They say, I just don't feel good today. So There are so many ways to look at mental health, but I know many of us are going to contribute to this. As we go on, I would be chipping in as to if there's any additional thing we need to do. But briefly, I just want people to know that there's a difference between mental health and mental illness. And also, when it comes to African issues, we need to look at it from historical concept as well as contextually concept of mental health. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oni. I want to bring in here Odoa. This is an area that you are very knowledgeable about, and building on from what Dr. Oni was trying to say moments ago, if you don't mind putting this in context of the African immigrants in the United States, especially, regardless of where they are from, whether it's from Kenya, South Africa, or Nigeria, or Liberia, or whatever country from the continent of Africa. What is it, and why should we care?
Thank you, Dr. Jeremiah. Dr. Nee has guided us off on the on the right foot here. As he said, mental health is the totality of who we are. What it is a person's emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So when he mentioned a holistic approach, human beings, we are holistic. So you can't deal with one part and don't deal with the other. That's mental health for you. It's a person's total well-being, a person's psychological. That is how you think. Emotional, how you feel. Social, how you behave, how you act. When one of these, falls off, there's usually a noticeable difference in who you are, how you behave, and how you do these things. Mental health is very, very important because it starts everything off. Your childhood, your mental health experiences in childhood will basically go through your adolescence and all the way to adulthood. So there's no one particular style that is particular specific to the African immigrants, African men. Mental health is mental health. How we interpret culturally different. The biggest issue is the taboo associated, with mental health. And when we don't take care of our mental health, it could lead to mental illness. Mental health usually is there, we carry with us. Whatever your emotional state is, whatever your psychological state is, this is how it plays out in how you interact, in how you conduct yourself in whatever you do. So as Dr. New was saying, whatever definition World Health has given, of course there are studies, there are research out there that support what we're saying here. I guess we need to focus on how we Africans in particular, who is very, very reluctant in discussing mental health, will be willing to approach it when we know it is in us and we are experiencing it. We need to move past taboo. That if I talk about it, I say I have depression, I'm weak. No, you are not. The sooner you realize it and you begin to find services, find support treatment for it, the better. That is how you can recover. Yes, you can recover from mental illness. It depends on what your goal is. Whatever goal you want to achieve is how you determine whether you have recovered or not. Some goals could be I just want to walk. If you're able to get a job, you have recovered. It doesn't mean you don't have other maybe medication, therapy that is supporting everything you do. Therapy, all these supportive services. But first of all, we need to identify what it is and accept it when we have it, so we can get the best treatment timely. That's how we look at it for now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Odoa. Now, I'm going to bring in uh, Dr. Keeper, but before I bring you, Dr. Keeper, as you get ready for this, Sam, Sam, I put it in context. I know the two of you, John and you, pretty much your focus has been all around men and fatherhood. So I'm going to bring in the same context for a man, an African man. Really, when you talk about fatherhood or man, it doesn't care about the geographical boundaries. It simply means a human being. And you've dedicated your life on making sure that men grow up to be good fathers and build a society. And I'm sure during the discussion going to get into details of this, but put us in context of the same. Do men really suffer from mental illness, and should we care about their well-being? Unmute. Unmute, Sam. Okay, Sam has on mute. Ben? Ben, as we get Sam, I can make sure that the system, the phone should be working. I can bring in Dr. Kipo if he's on as we get Sam. Okay, so the technical problem there. Is John on? John?
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Sorry about that. Go on. You, you're good, Sam.
You want me to go?
No, okay, go ahead as we get him back, Dr. Oni.
Who should go now, man?
Yes, go ahead, John.
All right. Kind of a good perspective, guys, to what mental health and mental illness is. But looking at it from the African perspective, our major default has been the lack of diagnosis of what mental illness is. And when you look at it technically, the issue of mental illness has a lot to do with what we do, individuals. And there are causes of mental illness. Now, I will look at it from a neurological perspective. You talk about the issue of processing information in the brain system. Now, there are categories of mental illness. You got mental retardation. And what causes mental retardation? It's a delay in birth in Africa and other places, and that could affect the brain system of the child in the process of processing information. And let's look at fetal alcohol syndrome, which is a number of mental illness. When the mother is pregnant and she drinks excessively, that also affects the brain of the unborn child. And that leads to mental retardation as well and other areas of difficulties in learning. So our problem now is we really don't know what are the causes or the initial starting point that lead to mental illness. Now, there are two major categories of mental anxiety and what? Schizophrenia. You have schizophrenia hallucination, where you hear, talking to yourself and they say, oh, he's crazy. Now, what we need is to diagnose what we have in Africa. We need mental health practitioner. Our government have within the mental health capacity in the health system to assist in diagnosing what leads to mental health. Because we overlook the issues. When you talk about mental illness, it has a lot to the brain system. Because if you cannot process information due to some delay, then the frontal lobe, the part of the brain that makes sense of what we do, is also affected. The body chemistry in neurological thinking, the body produces its own chemical. If for some reason there's mental illness or genetic default, and the body cannot produce that kind of transmission for you to process information properly, it leads to delay in learning. There are many factors in Africa overlooked. We stereotype people like the oh, the man is crazy, the woman is crazy, without finding out whether the person is suffering from schizophrenia or suffering from delusion and so on. So there's a lot we need to inform our communities, particularly in Africa. We need to diagnose our mental health. Mental health is well-being. When you can process information, you can relate to others with respect. But in some countries in Africa and other third world countries where you have civil war and civil upheaval. You got the issue of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That look, it's a major mental illness. You might not commit, but the fact that you saw the graphic killing another individual, that affects the system as well. And then we have mood disorder, which is a big category of mental, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and all of these in Africa, we do not diagnose them because we don't have the manpower or we do not emphasize your mental illness. So we have to bring to light some of these things within our community. The Africans in the diaspora, we are blessed to a large extent because there are people, mental health practitioners in hospitals where your cases can be diagnosed and you can be treated and your life can be improved. Is that could add?
Good. So, here, Dr. Kipo, I'm going to get back to you in a moment, but I'm going to bring here Sam. I think, Sam, we have Sam back on. So, again, as I said, Sam, you dedicate most of your time working on fatherhood, but see, that does not change the fact that a man has to go through this situation. What's your take on this, Sam?
Well, thank you so much again. I think this conversation is very, very important. But what I can say is men's mental health, especially among the immigrant community and the well-being, their transition to fatherhood is a very significant thing, important to the public health issue that is poorly understood. What am I saying? I'm saying that from a society point of view and through various discussions with the global fatherhood communities, the mental health discussion plays a critical role in the formation of the fatherhood identity and also addressing the competing challenges of the new fatherhood role, especially here, and the negative feelings and the fears that relate to the mental health. Now, in the US has a huge racial divide, and this has been shown by the ongoing arrest. And some of the significant examples of social inequality include the income gap, the gender inequality, the healthcare, and the social class contributes to mental stress. Now, let me talk now from the point of a father and the point of a father. What I'm going to say is this: immigrant men, we work two stressful jobs to provide for the family. We face marriage challenges. Changes in lifestyles often result in feelings of mental stress. And the worst thing, and we fathers face masculinity. We live in denial, or sometimes we abuse alcohol or drugs just to hide our mental illness. Let me go back to your question. Mental disparities, especially in our community. We have to understand mental health problems have high economic and also social cost. I think the panel will agree with me that many communities have limited capacity, that's the infrastructure, the workforce, and the resources needed to assess, identify, and treat mental health disorders. To the fatherhood, I'll say this: immigrant fathers, especially who are here, that's including me also, and also including Adua, we need more guidance. We need more community support that rally around the preparation of a successful father. Because remember, becoming a father when you're back home, we had mentors. But in this scenario here, we are doing everything by ourselves. We don't have like a safety net to make these fathers to be good fathers in the community, and we don't want them to fail. So this conversation is very important. It's opening up a new channel of conversations, communication, and I know if we take it to the next level, fathers, men in the diaspora community will benefit.
To have heard of you guys start the conversation very well. So let's go back to what Dr. Oni said and his quote earlier on. One of the major problems that I think we all agree with the African mindset is that really this doesn't exist. But based on your presentation so far, it's clear that it is a problem. So for us to move forward, we really need to start by debunking some of the stereotypes that exist, particularly associated with mental health. So clearly, Dr. Oni put it very clear in that very powerful quotation. It's either there's some funny spirit somewhere, some witchcraftly, or foreseen God, or whatever that is, or Otherwise, if you say you have a problem, you're going to feel ashamed, hide from the public, and that's very detrimental to self, to family, and to the extended family. So I'm going to jump back to Dr. Oni. So how do we debunk the stereotypes before we even think of moving forward?
Well, I think issues. From my own knowledge about our African men and African people, is that again, this has to do with our culture. Culture play a very vital role in accepting your illness. And sometimes people don't even understand what type of illness they have. If they don't understand, they cannot accept it. A lot of people understand when they have diabetics, they know what to eat and what not to eat. But when you have talking about mental health and mental illness, people are so confused. And people will say you are, if especially for men, we did some study in among men, African American men, in a barber shop. We have to go to barber shop to really know about how they are feeling and how they are talking freely about mental illness. So what that means is we need to create a saving place where people don't feel vulnerable, where people feel they can say something and nobody will use it against them. Like I said in the last meeting, there is what we call gossip syndrome within the community. The gossip syndrome disorder is in our community, whereby you hear something and you go ahead with it. So when it comes to men, men always believe that we can do everything. And we think you can just shake it off. When you are depressed, just shake it off. What do you shake off? You can't do that. So it's like when you have diabetes, you can't just say, let me shake my leg or whatever way, and I'll be fine. So acceptance is very important. Until when we accept that we have this illness, we may not look for treatment. The other aspect of our culture sometimes is when you do that so much, they think you are over assimilating to whiteness. When you go for therapy, they say, what are you going to talk therapy for? But remember now, back home, we have talk therapy. We just don't call it psychotherapy. When you go to the elders and talk to them about your feelings, that's talk therapy. The difference here is that people don't have that support system. They do not see that as a needed whiteness illness. People look at mental health as white people's illness, especially when you go and sit down and talk to them about their issues. And they're not telling you about their own issues. So we say, oh, why can't you not tell me your own issue and I'm telling my own to you? So we have to find a way to meet in the middle. We need to also know, look at this COVID-19. A lot of Africans don't believe it's happening until when they see a relative, somebody closer to them, that they believe to say it's happening. The same thing with Ebola. So I have worked in those areas to really make sure that we educate our people. We need to educate our people when it comes to mental illness. We also need to try to bring people who have experienced it and get out of it. Because a lot of time people just think it's even a treatable illness. So when you hear some people that say, hey, I have very clinical depression, that I went to the point of taking medication, going to therapy, when you have those examples, that will help. And until we start accepting that illness, we are going to continue to deny it. But more importantly, our community as a whole, we need to do education awareness so that we do not distance ourselves from people with mental illness. We also have this in our culture that if you have somebody and the gossiply find out you have mental illness, nobody will marry you. Because they say, oh, there's a fear that people with mental illness are very disruptive. They can be destructive as well. And they have very low concept about mental illness. So that is one of the areas we need to focus on. Education, awareness, and acceptance.
This is your area of expertise. You should be very comfortable with this. One of the questions that the ladies asked from last week, and they're watching, by the way, so they're expecting a response to this. The question was, how do we start a culture of talking, a culture of communication so that we really get together on the same boat? the key point here, we're really talking about the state of the mind. And if the state of the mind is not in good position, quite frankly, as a human being, you're not going to function well. That means if you're leading a family, you're not going to lead a family well. And then collectively, if our state of mind is not good, that means we, as an immigrant society, we're not going to be successful in driving the diaspora agenda. What we probably might have is a disintegration of who we are and probably the killing of dreams. Your thoughts?
Remember,
Odua. Odua.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that question. First and first, I want to follow up on the thread by Dr. Oni. Before we come to accepting, because until we create that awareness, talk about it in our local organizations where we are very effective, talk about it in our group churches, talk about it in our little social groups that we all belong to. Because it is there. It doesn't matter whether you run away from it. It doesn't matter whether you deny it. It is a fact. It's existing. It's existing. In terms of the question, if I understand again, the question said, how can we improve mental health to help the family? Is that the question? What was the question? Okay. First of all, your family, as we know it, family is the how do you call it? Is the nuclear unit that we all belong to. Everybody wants a good family background. However, when you have mental illness in your background, when two couples marry, I bring my background, you bring your background with my baggage, whatever it is. In most cases, people don't really care about, let's find out what's in your background. You see somebody you like, he's handsome, she's beautiful, you continue. Until down the road, you find out what these limitations are. The question is, are you ready? Because when mental illness strikes, quite in most cases, most families, most people affected by it don't know where to go, don't know where to find resources. And that's because there's not enough information about how to address these issues. As Dr. Oni mentioned, if somebody has diabetes, you hear diabetics medications on TV all the time. Heart disease medication on TV all the time. You don't see anybody promoting clozapine. You don't see anybody promoting these medications that are typically used for treating mental illness. You don't see it. So when it happens, in most cases, from experience, what I've heard, families say, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what to do. So for the time, however long it takes them to be able to come out of that and begin to find help, it could take how many years? While they are doing it, the severity of the condition intensifies. Until, God forbid, something tragic happens, we never really talk about it. So my thing is, mental health is important. Before you do anything, take care of yourself. Make sure you make time for your own well-being. Make sure you make time for your own well-being, because if you don't, you will pay for it, your family will pay for it, your society will pay for it, your community will pay for it. So families will be stronger when men are able to maintain good mental health. Not just men, by the way, women, because the family strength by nature starts with men. So when the man in the household is stable, you bring that stability into the house. That is how you plan. That is how you interact with your spouse. That is how you interact with your children, and it manifests. But when you have mental health, where your thinking has been compromised, your ability to interact is compromised, your emotion and feeling is compromised. There's not much you can do about it, and it plays out. So it's usually here people go, I don't know what's wrong with him. He's not trying to be funny. He just doesn't have that cognitive ability. He doesn't have the cognitive ability to manage stress. Stress is very powerful. Whatever level it comes from, lower, higher, medium, your ability to manage stress will carry you a long way, and it will say so much about your mental health, your mental status. Because one of the first fallout is that ability to manage stress when you are dealing with mental health issues.
I'm going to bring in, moving slightly further, and I'm going to bring these two gentlemen here, Dr. Kipo and Sam, because pretty much, again, like I said moments ago, it's all about this. Odua is saying, the key question we ask ourselves, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with her? what's wrong? Here's a question for you, and I think because you focused a lot on this, Dr. Kipo, to start with you, and I recall to our viewers that your doctoral dissertation was pretty much about fatherhood, and Sam works pretty much in the same industry. What are some of the causes? Be more specific. What are some of the causes of mental illness? Now that we have debunked that, what are some of the specific causes so that we're able to address those problems well? Sam, Dr. Kipo.
When you talk about fatherhood in America for Africans, immigrants, you know that most African societies for some reason, for one reason or another, you migrated to the United your family, and you have been honored your family. Why in Africa? Now, you have to share that responsibility in taking care of family. Now, your social status that makes you the father. And talk about the illness, we have to look at psychological impact. If you feel psychologically depressed, that leads to stress, and you manage that. There are situations that creates that. You used to be a medical doctor in, say, or America. You are reduced to being a janitor. That alone causes illness through stress and psychological psychosis. Now, how do we deal with that? Like the previous presenter said, America, it is not like Africa where we express our issue in community setting. Individualistic society we live in America and some country, you as an African immigrant, you have little contact. Who do I talk to if I feel depressed? Because depression and stress have made mental illness affect African men because of positionality in society. We are somehow reduced. Research that I conducted in 2013 revealed that most African men that they have lost their status, lost being part of the home when they have to ask their wife's income. Because in Africa, you are the only breadwinner, but in America, both of you are winning bread, so you have to decide how to spend the money. Some structural adjustment needs to be made. There where we have to educate our community. Like in the diaspora, you cannot continue to have this male chauvinistic attitude. You have to adjust to the culture of your host country so that you can manage your family activities in a way that you will not, depressed, and that could lead to some mental illness. I have written extensively on the issue of migration and how it impacts African men in particular. What is the psychological balance where you will always coach or self-therapy? Hey, sorry now, you have to adjust, you have to learn new culture, you have to go in and watch them. Your wife have to take care of the children. Now, these are things that we don't do in Africa. In some African countries, we don't do that. So this is the basic information. We always try to find out what is the cause of what. Like I mentioned earlier, in some issue of mental illness, like mental retardation or schizophrenia, all of those things are embedded in the process of an individual, which is now they help us to understand how do we process information when we find ourselves being as African immigrant men in our community. How we relate to our children. How was the they control major company in West Africa, and now I am in a group home or in a nursing home. How does it through the family and psychology as a father? So those areas when we are educating the tell them you have to readjust. You need all manners.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John. So let me get to you, Sam. Sam, obviously, we've had a lot of these conversations about what happens, particularly from the man perspective and fathers in particular, regardless of the situation that men find ourselves. And I think we are meant to believe that African men, you have to be as strong as possible. For the children, you have to be strong. And the fact that whether you are with or without the mother, DNA does not change. So, from your experience, what are some of the specific causes of mental illness that we need to address? Try to be as specific as possible.
Well, again, I want to say thank you again. Well, generally, I wanna say this. The intent is, how do you respond to mental illness? Depend on your background, especially fathers, your social support from family, from friends, your financial situation, your health, and the emotional background of your community you live in, and many other factors. But I'm going to base my points on basically what's going on right now, especially the COVID-19 pandemic. You have seen, especially in our community, older black men with a higher risk of severe illness, maybe like diabetes, they're having a big impact because of the underlying medical conditions here. At this time, we are seeing so many males, they are isolated. They don't have the emotional, the emotional tumor because of the lack of personal touch, or maybe visit from family and friends. Also, at this time, also one of the contributing factor of our mental stress is we have so many men in our community. Also, they have lost their jobs, or their work hours have been reduced, and or they had other significant changes to their employment relating to a massive setback. So this has really impacted this man because of a reduced of income in their house. Another thing also I've already noted during this time of COVID-19, we have breakdown. Marriages are falling apart because men are trying to because of lack of income, because of the widespread quarantines, extended school closures, and added to that, travel restrictions. So men spending time more home, and it's having an impact. It's a new environment. You have been doing things outside. Now you feel like you are in a cage, and definitely you have had so many marriages. It's having an impact, and hope not, but we have spoken to few men in the community who are really thinking of divorcing their wives. Uh, Also, another thing also with the COVID-19, right now what's going on, mixed emotions from older people in the community who do not have access to information in their primary language. I remember also we live with our elders in our homes. We can't afford to keep them in a daycare, or in an elder center where we can pay some money, then they'll be taken care of. But we live with them, so they're so much vulnerable, especially our older men and our older men. One thing also I've noticed, because of the isolation, I see there is an increased use of alcohol and other substances, because men, again, they're feeling isolated, they are alone, they are trying to navigate this new journey in this disease, and just how to survive. So I've not heard, but I've heard there is cases of other states. Few men have already committing suicide. I've read in Africa, back in my country, men are committing suicide because pretty much they're giving up. They can't put food on the table. You have a wife, you have 3 children, and you are just pushed to a corner, to a point whereby you think if you leave this world, you don't want even to leave the social problems and emotional problems to your family or to your community. They think you just have to go together. Again, I've seen the stress of couples, especially at this time of isolation. You find there is the issue of unplanned pregnancy. A child is gonna come up. They're not happy. The couples are not happy. You have a child, and the trauma of knowing that the COVID-19, you have lost your job, you have issues with your marriage, and then a child is involved. And I wonder how this child is going to be raised, because and I think it's going to be raised maybe in a single family home, because maybe the husband will leave, the wife will leave, and then and this child will have to survive in a way. I don't even know how it's going to be manageable. I think coming up here, I think I'm learning how we can be able to put this, we can be able to find solutions going forward for our community. Again, I want to say this. Another issue about mental stress, again, when I talk to men there in the community, you have seen patterns or mask non-compliance or just ignorance in the population from different communities passing this virus. So people get scared, people fear, because even those ones who can afford to go to a clinic to get tested, they fear that me integrating with my community or meeting other men, they may get the disease. So there is that fear, and the fear that though you want to meet your community, you want to talk, you want to go out, you want to socialize, but there's a fear that you're going to get the disease, and it's a mental thing, because how are you going to go home? Because you're going to go home, and also this is going to impact your family again. And I don't think I have much. That's what I have right now.
A very, very insightful points there. So let me jump forward again so that we move a bit faster here to Odo. I'm going to bring you back, and then I'm going to bring in Dr. Oni and Dr. Kipo respectively. So as we continue with these conversations, the key point here, we're not targeting an individual or a group of immigrants here. We're pretty much saying the same problems that an African immigrant faces from Kenya is pretty much the same problems that an African immigrant. So it is a problem that every African pretty much goes through. Mr. Odoa, if you could please speak to all African communities across the United States. The problem that affects one man pretty much does not necessarily affect his family. It does affect the entire community. Let me give you an example. For example, here in Minneapolis, where we live, whenever one person passes on or one person has a problem, what I've seen in the last few years is a situation where we all group together in a WhatsApp group and we make contribution, which to me means when one person is affected, the entire community is affected, whether it's the children, whether it's immediate family members, whether it's extended family. Could you speak widely to why we should really care about this from a community perspective?
Jeremiah. First of all, the whole thing about the causes, if I may just add one thing or two to that, Stam quite said, I think we need to go back to biology. Like they say, we cannot choose who our parents are. Our DNA is what it is. If you are genetically predisposed to mental illness, all you need to make it happen is a trigger. That's it. Whatever it may be. Biologically, once you are genetically made up of those genes, they are just there. It's not if, it's when it's going to happen. Now, societal, you will hear sometimes they'll say causes of mental illness in society. It is society because when you start to drink, when you start to use drugs, those are the effect of society. However, these things are just triggers. In relation to COVID-19, every one of us is dealing with COVID-19. If you don't have those mental health struggles, probably your sufferings, how you relate, how you think about COVID-19 may be different from somebody who is already dealing with those mental health issues. Because anxiety is nothing other than fear. I've heard the panel say, use the word psychology, emotional. No, probably just in the interest of our audience, when we say psychology, let us break it down. Say our thinking. When we say emotional, how we feel. Because sometimes the words we use makes this concept a little bit more for people to understand. Because people, hey, psychology, yeah, that, but what is that really? That's your thinking. Emotion, that is how you feel. Now, in terms of the effect of this thing on the community, absolutely. To me, planning. Let's plan ahead. As we said earlier, mental health, mental issues are here to stay. Rather than wait till the end and probably transfer those social responsibilities to your family, our orientation is what it is. But in my opinion, we need to learn to adjust. We are in a different environment. We don't have those usual social networks we had grandfathers, except when Dr. Oni came to America, his grandfather gave him $1 million to start. Many of us did not get that. So we need to learn how to assimilate, ask questions. You are in a much bigger, much educated, much civilized society than where we come from. Let's try to integrate our orientation from wherever we came from here. Now, when issues happen, usually, yeah, we go around, make contributions, but whether you do that or not, there are ways you can help to mitigate that. You have life insurance, those are resources. You have your 401k at your jobs, those are resources. In addition to that, reach out. There's nothing like, I don't want people to laugh at me. Nobody even knows who you are. Reach out, make your planning, meet with financial planners, meet with cremation society. How does this thing work? Those things you are afraid to talk about, just because you are afraid doesn't mean they will not happen. We know death is inevitable. It's just a matter of when. Why not plan ahead? That is what happens in our society. Now, the whole thing about stress, Dr. Ni rightly mentioned, he's a professional here. He talked about the gossip syndrome. Call Dr. Oni. Dr. Oni is one of my mentors in the society. When I go to him, I'm not going to worry about he's going to judge me. I'm going to speak in Nigerian broken English, pidgin English, because there's nothing, no grammar he will say I will not understand. Go to people you are comfortable with. That is why sometimes you hear people talk about cultural competency. There's nothing like cultural competency. Instead, it is cultural responsiveness. Cultural competency is just chaos, chaos waiting to happen. Whereas cultural responsiveness is saying, tell me what I need to know, and I'm willing to teach you. Whereas cultural competency is saying, I expect you to be able to know this, or I expect you to do this, but when you fail, then I'm fighting, I'm arguing. No, let's throw away that concept of cultural competency and begin to teach our people cultural responsiveness. When you talk about resources, that is very big. Cultural responsiveness is when people who are familiar, who knows what you are, how you are, how you relate. So, for instance, I'm running for city council. If I'm lucky I get in, one of the issues I'm going to be stressing, we can no longer use one style fit all approach. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Let's find out people who knows the background of these people with the same lived experiences. Dr. Ni has a lot of resources. Let's contract with him. That is not to say he's going to serve just the African population immigrant. No, his lived experiences as an immigrant, he can relate to the Chinese. He can relate to Native Americans. He can relate, compared to his counterpart who's a Caucasian man, with all due respect to them. I'm not saying they are not smart, but Dr. Ni has that lived experiences that will make him very, very useful to the whole community and not the segment. So these are things we need to do. Reach out. Don't wait. Reach out, because your well-being matters a lot. Your well-being matters. Like I used to teach my soccer players, where your head goes, your body goes. When your head is not well, your body is sick. Your body cannot do anything, regardless of how you try. Because even when you try, that's when chaos, that's when confusions happen, because your role is mixed up. As Dr. Capo said earlier, in Africa, yes, we our men usually take the brunch, but here we are sharing. But people are still locked up in that old mentality. I have to take it off. No, I do this. No, you are in a society now where women are integral part of your household. They're integral part of your family. It's not just you. Open up. There's no reason to be afraid. When you see issues come up, go to the professionals, go to the experts, talk to your church members. Don't wait. Call. There are people you can talk to. Let's do it. It helps.
Oh, thank you. Excellent. You are sounding like a politician. I think the next thing that we're going to do is to talk about how we get you to the office. And thank God we have sponsors here. We have a multi-millionaire in the name of Dr. Onis. Dr. Oni, I want to get to you. Dr. Oni, I want to get to you here. I think we don't have audio from Dr. Oni. I want to get to him. The clients you serve are not Nigerians or anything. It's pretty much everybody from around the world. And more specifically, I wanted you to talk straight to the African audience. That the mental state of a man is not just the individual. It really does mean it affects the family. That means the children. It means the women. It means immediate family members. It means the extended family members. By extension, it does affect our immigrant community. By the way, as we have this conversation, just so you know, there are those ones who are watching from several parts of Africa. if any one of us has a problem, regardless of where you're from, it has have an effect, to those, particularly to those ones also who are back at home. You want to speak to that as well, Dr. Oni?
A lot of people have addressed. We do have mentioned different aspects of why this is not just uniquely for Nigerians or Kenya. Many Africans that come here, we migrated here with all our issues and assumptions. People's assumptions become their realities. When you made this assumption, you keep on banging on it. A lot of us, we come here because we believe, especially men, we come here, we cannot change. See, they say when you are in Rome, you have to do as Romans. There are certain things we have to change. We have to change the way we look at things. We have to change the way we have to change with the way we expect our women to act. Sometimes we come here, back home, you let women not do much. Here, they work harder than you men. And when they're out of job, they go to work, you stay home, and you are looking for this executive job. But because you have not gotten it, you become very frustrated. It's all Africans. Because our credentials sometimes is not evaluated the same way here. Many of us are able to go to school. I did all my undergraduate, all my schooling in this country after high school. Now, I have a different outlook to things because of the way we were brought up back home. And when we came here, we cannot adapt. So adaptation is very important to all Africans when they are here. You cannot expect the same type of treatment you receive back home here. Not even Kenya, not Nigeria, but all Africans, when you come here, you get to throw away that cap of I'm African man and I can do anything, I can do and undo. No, you cannot do and undo here. You have to be humble. We talk about cultural assumption or responsibility, but I call it cultural humility. I don't look at it as cultural competence, I look at it as humility. You have to be humble. Cultural humility tells you that you don't know everything. You know some, but not all. So you have to humble to say, I don't know this aspect. That's humility. That's cultural humility. Back home, we come here, we think we know everything, we don't. So when we come here and those things are not working the way we expected it to be, that's when we result into some behavior that people will hold you accountable for and it will not be good. I can give you a series of examples of our men. Like few of them, one of them that is really standing out right now was a guy that came to my office after he had seen a therapist for 2 years, an American therapist, and was court order to come to me, and was also court order to see a therapist. So when there was no end road to everything they have been doing, because he was accused of abusive to the family because he has no job. He has no money thing that he didn't have and become aggressive. So one day I think he did something wrong and he was brought to court. So they had to tell him to go and do what we call anger management. Well, he was with this white therapist. I don't have anything against white therapists, but sometimes these cultural issues make a difference. So he saw him for 2 years and nothing happened. Every time they go to court, they said they cannot go back to the family because he has not fulfilled the requirement. So one day somebody mentioned my name and he came to me. He's from Africa. When he came in, he walked in, he said, "Oh, how are you?" And I said, "How are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm not crazy." And I said, "Why are you talking about craziness?" He never met me before. He said, "Because I read about you, I Google you." And I said, "Okay, so what does that really mean?" He said, "I just want you to know I'm not crazy." And I said, "Okay." So I was quiet enough and I said, "Just tell me why you are here." The old man, I think he's about 40 something, just busted into cry. And I said, "What's going on?" She said, "I come here to borrow money." I said, "You know I'm not a bank. You don't come here to borrow money. Tell me what is going on." Then he quickly broke down and said, "Well, I've been here for 5 years. I was an executive state director of finance in my country, and I've been here for 5 years with no job." Now we start talking. I can relate to that. So I said, "Okay, so what are you looking for?" He said, "I'm an accountant." I said, "Okay, just briefly, I will just summarize that." And I said, "Okay, why don't we look at some small job in a finance? He said, so anything I have, I can do. Okay. It was in the summer. I went to a picnic of a friend who worked in the TCF bank. They told me they have opening. The very following week that the guy came to see me for therapy, I said, hey, I have a connection for you. He said, well, I don't have clothes to go for interview. I said, okay, let's go to Burlington Coat Factory. We went there, we got some shirts and, pants. He went for an interview. He got the job as a cashier. He got the job. Within 3 months, he was doing well. We have to go to court again. We went to court. I told the court what I did and what he did. Guess what? This guy, after 6 months, he went to visit friends in Atlanta. He wasn't talking about going to Africa anymore. But he wanted to camouflage to say, oh, I want to go. No, he didn't want to go back. But because of my relationship of knowing that when many of us come here, we don't have good job and we can be very depressed and be abusive. That was how I was able to relate to it. So I was humble enough to listen to him. He would have thrown me off, and because he said, I'm not crazy. I didn't want to treat you for craziness. You are just seeing me for the first time. So what we need to do as Africans is to not hide our feeling. Tell people that knows you, that can relate to your issues sometimes. That is very important. That's what they call cultural matching, client matching. If you can match your client with somebody that has cultural humility, you're going to have a success. But majority of us, we don't give each other a chance. We need to give each other a chance. So my take on this question is for all of us that are from Africa to be open. Don't do like African way, where if you are traveling tomorrow, you say you are traveling the next week, when you know your luggage is on the way to the airport. We have that feeling, misconceptions, misinformation about cultural issues, that somebody's going to attack me at the airport, so I better don't tell them the day I'm leaving. That's the kind of belief system that we carry here too when it comes to illness. So we need to really be open. We need to seek help, and we need to get it. And when you get it, make sure you let other people know, so that other people are not hiding their illnesses. That is what I want to add to that question.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dr. Oni. And I'm going to bring in Dr. Kipo, if you're on here. I think this subject really plays into what you really dedicated your life to, doing research, and particularly African men who migrated from your life to doing research, and particularly. So, John, if you can add on to what Dr. Oni was saying moments ago, particularly with the men who come to the U.S. and transitioning into professional jobs could be a frustration to some, and I'm sure you've done a lot of research on this one. Could you add on to that? At the same time, Sam, when I get ready to, and Odoa, to provide some available resources for African men here. Okay, Dr. Kibo.
The basis of the research that the owner come to America as an African man, as an African father. I said earlier that you have to readjust. First of all, to know that we can only acculturate to a certain level, but we can be assimilated, meaning that on your job, you will experience different receptions. The dominant. Now, what I think when I sound like West African, you have to start from ground zero. And took the guy, the bank, and tell how it is. You cannot carry that baggage from Africa to America, to Europe. You need to have some cultural adjustment, meaning that, hey, start from somewhere. I mentioned earlier that doctor, you janitor. That's luggage to psychological psychosis to deal with. So what do you do? And when we are putting awareness for our African image open, and tell them, look, do not let what you use in society, you have to leave that baggage behind and start all. If you were an accountant here in America, you cannot easily get that, go to school and meet up with requirements before you can be to practice. But if you don't do that, you open a Pandora box, lead to mental illness. Because once you become one of the reason why there's some breakup. If you the man looking for a professional job for 2 years and the wife working over and doing over and there, and that is not going to be happy. And that is major cause divorce. Because in Africa, you have all the money, the family. In America, the woman is making all the money. You are looking for a professional job that might come 4 to 5 years. And the only way you get one is to go to. I was a career bank, worked for Chase Manhattan Bank, worked for Housing and Savings Bank, turned the auditor. I went to Minnesota. They said, look, we're going to call you Bank of America. We're going to employ you as account clerk. Start somewhere. And while doing that, you go to school. So we have to tell young freaking immigrants that you need to reorientate yourself. That this is not you can. I used to don't live by I used to be. Live by you can do now. Move forward. I started from ground zero as far as director. If I can do it, I can do it in the community. I even went beyond that to get free in organization of my education. And I tell my students, if you went to a center, he may stand there for it and want to be like him immediately. That's what you have to. And providing ways are the things we need to our immigrants that you have to come down and cooperate. Take care of your family, do anything legal to provide for the family while you're away, while you
Oh, thank you, Dr. Kipo, there from Liberia. I appreciate you being on, and obviously we're having some technical problem, but I think the message is very clear. So I did mention Sam and Odoa. So very quickly, what resources are there available for African men? And when we talk about men here, I'm not necessarily meaning the gender. I'm just saying anybody who has that mental issue within the community. So you want to start with Sam?
Just to jump in, I want to say we have a large number of organizations that are offering resources and support by phone, help or information coping up with mental illness or coronavirus and disruption of your routines. But I want to say one thing before I jump into the resources. If you don't know what you're looking for, I always tell people the first thing, start with your community leaders. Some of these community leaders, they have the information. They can be able to put these structures together. They can contact us, then we can provide the information. Number one, let's start from home. I'll say the City of Brooklyn Park has got resources on mental illness. My organization, the Global Fatherhood Foundation, we have information. When you contact us, we'll direct you to a resource portal. National Alliance of Mental Illness in Minnesota. They provide online support groups and classes for people with mental illness and family members. And also, I know they target also immigrant communities also. Another thing I want to say is Minnesota Department of Health Community Mitigation. They have also some of the resources here for people who are going through mental illness. If you're talking about depression and suicide prevention, there is a crisis text line. I think when you text this helpline, it will connect you to a trained counselors for individualized support. I was told they have an individualized support. So depending on where you come from, if you are an immigrant, whatever part of the world, they have special people who will help you and will give you up the information. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, this is for everybody. This one, they connect individuals with counselors for emotional support. and other services via web chat, a phone call. And understand this is for free. So we have free information. And what I'm going to put, I think I'm going to put these resources there and forward them to community leaders so that they can have a resource portal from whatever they have. Again, if you're talking about domestic violence, we handle that through our organization here in Brooklyn Park. One thing another say is we have Minnesota mental health clinics. These are provide services provided that offer therapy and other support programs for mental health related issues. Men domestic violence crisis, we can work with you. We have handled a couple of them when you're going through domestic violence in the community, and we go through giving you resources and also going all the way to present you to the court. Another thing I want to say is substance abuse, again, affects mental. Substance abuse and mental illness administration national, I think there's a national helpline. There's a number, a provided number. The number is 1-800-662-4357. They also guide you, and they try to understand what kind of problem you're going through, and so they'll be able to provide you a resource. Alcohol Anonymous Minnesota for our African men who are going through so many challenges, and they try to run away from the problem by drinking alcohol every time. There's a resource for you. There are resources for you. And actually, I was surprised because we have so many churches actually they're starting AAA programs. I think depending on the days, you meet on a Monday, you meet on a Sundays, and these people, they're able to come together, they're able to tell their stories, and they're able to know that there are people who are going through those challenges just like themselves. So they get the empowerment to move on. And I think that is what I have for now.
Thank you. Odua, you know, add on to that?
Yes, I don't really want to repeat it, to prevent a redundancy here. Maybe another very support agency here is called COPE. COPE is very powerful. Another thing is, like we have already established here, if and when you need help, reach out. Let me kind of back a little bit. The experience Doc just explained to us is exactly we, the African immigrants, must support our people running for offices, not because I'm just running, because what he did, he demonstrated how your culture plays a role in helping somebody else who needs help. Our people, we need to understand how political capital, could lead to social and emotional well-being. Okay, we just need to understand that, which is what leads to community well-being. Now, when you have your people in offices, I'm not saying the white therapist was not doing a good job. There's something about when you go to an office and you see somebody that looks like you. Granted, there's not a lot of services for mental health or mental illness. We know that. But when you see somebody that looks like you, there's an instant comfort level you feel. Whether you think they know you or they're not, regardless of where they may come from, that person looks like me. There's that instant comfort you feel that sort of makes you relax more than when you meet somebody else who may not understand you. The therapy who work with that individual doctor finally connected, I can bet you, did not focus on who this guy was. The focus probably was on who this guy was other than what he wanted to do. You have mental illness. What if he has mental illness? This guy was not mental illness. It was just a struggle he was dealing with. Try to separate them. This guy has a life. He is John. He is Peter. He's not schizophrenia. He's not depression. What Dr. Nee did was separate that, bringing that cultural abilities to separate that, to know that if I try this way, other than maybe a white therapist who just focus on if you do this test, if you do that, it will work. No, find out what this guy really needs. So that is why we need to reach out to our people. Nobody's going to laugh at you. I can guarantee you that. Nobody will laugh at you. If you go to NAMI, if you go to COPE, you can ask, is there an African person here I can talk to? There's nothing wrong with that. Is there an African person I can talk to? There's nothing wrong with that. If they don't, they may reach out to somebody like me, somebody like Sam. Then I can link you up to Dr. Oni, or they can go to Dr. Oni, who can connect you to other places. Don't just feel compelled to accept whatever assistance you are given right away. It's good to accept. Please cooperate with your therapist. This is not a therapy section. We are just saying how to best support you. If you go to a place you are not comfortable, you can ask. It's allowed. Is there a black man here? Is there an African here? Somebody that looks like me. If they don't have one on staff, they will, by law, they are required to find you somebody that looks like you. So support is available, but you have to ask. Unfortunately, people don't know. Some of these resources Sam just mentioned, they are right there. The only reason he knows is because he is in this profession. He's working on it. But somebody who doesn't know, doesn't know. We are talking about this. What about parents who are dealing with children with autism? African parents who are dealing with children with autism. All these are neurological conditions that doesn't know where to go. Yet, like this child in the house for 24 hours is not going to solve it. You need help. So reach out. Go to Dr. Oni. Call Sam. Call myself. There are more people in the, not just the few of us. There are so many people. There's this Empire Television. Reach out to them. They can link you. Right now, you have African places where you can go. Speak to your pastors. Speak to your church leaders. We are comfortable with those people. Let them know what you are dealing with, and you can get help. Every of those resources Sam mentioned are very, very powerful. Please go and seek help. If you are dealing with drugs, please seek help. Gambling, because the bottom line is, if you are not well, there's nothing you can do about it. Let us make sure we take care of ourselves. Let's be well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So excellent discussion here. So here's the point. Good thinking, and I've received a lot of calls and text messages from people watching this, and here they're saying, excellent discussion. We appreciate what the gentleman is saying, but they're saying, okay, can you guys address this specific issue as a way of us moving forward? And us here, they're saying, look, it's not about men. It's about the mentality of the African person here. And they're saying, given what we've been going through in the recent times, not just COVID-19 and the George Floyd aftermath, but they're saying we've had a lot of problems in the community. They want to hear your direct voices. And the question is, how should we minimize the increasingly disturbing breakdown of families, incarcerations, drunkenness, and death as a result of mental illness within the immigrant community? So we've had this. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Oni, and I'm going to highlight this. I've had text messages from African Women, Minnesota Women Association, AMWAC, who are watching at the moment. I've also received text message from the Uganda Association, the Ghanaian Association, Liberian Association. I've seen this, and quite a number of community leaders and social media activists who are watching and asking, how do we move forward? There is increasing breakdown of families. Dr. Oni, how do we reduce this? And then I want to come back to you. Dr. Oni, take on that first.
Oh, okay. How are you talking about? Can you repeat the question again?
The increasingly, the question is, how do we minimize or otherwise eliminate the increasingly breakdown of families? The key point there, they say most of those ones texting me, they're saying the men are blaming the women for marriages breaking, and the men are saying no, it is because of the women. The children are saying it's because of the parents. How do we minimize this, or at the very least, how do we create a culture of communication or talk so that we reduce this as best as we can?
In fact, there is no one-way answer to this. There are some ways to address it. One of them is sometimes, like I said in that last meeting, that there's what they call American dream versus African dream. American dream is you are here, you want to have a big house. You have to have so many things, but you have to work for them. And in working for those things, you are taking away time from families. There's nothing wrong in working hard, but there's something nice to work smart. You got to work smart. If you buy houses and your goal is to live there, some people bought those houses, they don't even sleep there because they are working 24/7. And now there's a breakdown. You don't even know when your kids come back from school. And when they come back from school, you don't have enough time to say, how was school today? How was school today? What did you do today? Kids need that attention. When they are not getting it from families, they go somewhere else. And when they go there, they get wrong information to go against the family themselves. So it is important for families, if we want to really connect, we need to do like Africa. We need to have African dream, because African dream sometimes is not applicable here. It takes a village to raise a child, but there's no village here to raise your child. You are the only village. And as such, you get to create that village for yourself. One of the ways to do that is to also connect with another friends that can help you. We need to minimize our acquisition of wealth, acquisition of properties. We want to go to Paris. We want to wear the best clothes. This is African way of living, okay? We cannot live that here. We get to give room for something to happen. That means you can't have your cake and still have it. If you want to eat your cake, eat it completely, but you cannot have it back. So if you want to have all this American dream, that means you are compromising your family connections. When your kid goes to school, you are sleeping. When they come back, you are sleeping. So what time do you have? When your husband comes from work too, he too is sleeping and you are sleeping. The kids are left alone. They are on the street. They now join some group of gangs, some group of drinkers, some group of smokers. So then they come home and they are hiding everything from you. But you didn't even have time to investigate what is going on. So I don't think it's men or women or husband. I think it's everybody's issue. We need to contribute equally, if not 50-50, let it be 60-40. Who is getting 40? I don't know. Who is getting 60? I don't know. I'm just saying you have to have some distribution of calls, chores, availability to your child, availability to yourself. Maybe someday the husband is off, the wife is off. Try to connect your off times so that you can be together sometime. Try to connect to do weekend off together. So a lot of these things, I don't think you should be pointing finger, because when you point one, the rest five comes towards you. That means you are not doing it right. Don't point finger to your wife or your wife point finger at you. You need to all see it together. Now, the sense of communication is very important. How do you communicate without getting to aggression? Sometimes the only way we communicate is when we want something from each other. Maybe I need to pay rent today. I need contribution from you. I need contribution from that. So that is not the way to contribute to communicate. You need to communicate in a way that is very friendly, that is very family oriented, that is family friendly users. So our communication should not be just wants and wishes. It should be what can we do together. We should be using more we's than I in the family. There need to be more we's. We do this together. We do this together. Da, da, da. Oh, I did this. Oh, I do that. No, no, no. So all I can say to this is we will minimize the issue of our kids going out to seek help from the people that are not helpers. Some of the help they receive are more harmful than good. They are more harmful than helpful. And so we need to caution that. We also need to know where our kids are all the times. Sometimes our parents, sometimes too, we parent like field marshal. We parent like, don't talk to me, only when I ask you to talk. We cannot do that with our kids. Our kids of American, I told you before, that they are ABC, American born confused. We cannot confuse them more by not communicating with them. So when they come to you, find way to pay attention. Sometimes before they even ask you, go to them first, so that you give them 5 minutes to say, oh, okay, I just want to find out how your day went. Sometimes parents need to do that. But because you are so tired, you work 24/7. By the time you come home overnight, you are tired. When kids start talking to you, you get angry about it. You get very frustrated with your kids. So I am not saying it's easy, but we need to find way to make it happen. We cannot even go to schools meetings. Teachers want you to come to school meetings. I know it's not part of our practice back home, but people need to pay attention to that. It's very important. Now the kids have very good opportunity here. You don't have to fetch firewood to send them to school. You don't have to sell water to send them to school. The school is free. So your job now is to pay attention to them. So my brothers and sisters, we are not pointing fingers to men. We are not pointing fingers to women, but we want to work collaboratively as family. Thank you.
You are a great resource to the community, Dr. Oni. I want to tell you from my desk here, we are so proud of you and continue doing what you're doing. So I'm going to bring in here Sam and Odoa, and then I'll bring Dr. Kipo. You guys are around here and you're seeing what's happening. The text messages I'm receiving again are from across Africa. So, for example, as we speak, family breakdown has really had disastrous effects. And not just now, I think for the 20 years I've been in the US, I've seen this happen over and over again. Now, the Cameroonian community is mounting, I think, in Ohio, to a point where somebody had to take the wife's life and took his life. And in that process, three very innocent children have been left there. I think in Texas, the Nigerian community is going through the same. I think the gentleman also decided to take the wife's life and his life as well. I think here in the state of Minnesota, across the Kenyan community, I think pretty much most of the African community, we've seen this over and over and over again. Sam, and especially I want you to speak to this point again from a man perspective, particularly when an African man is really deprived of his fatherhood, that can really drive him even to the edge. We really don't want to get to that position. Speak to this. How do we move forward?
I think as African men, we need to change our perspective. One thing I've noted is most African men don't really understand what is women empowerment. Women empowerment. Remember when women, there's a big difference with men and women because women can be able to multi-navigate in situations whereby we cannot be able to navigate. Men, we just go on a straight line. Therefore, it's very, very important, like Dr. Oni said, men and women, you need to find, you need to reduce that gap and maybe work together. Again, I want to say, I want to talk to men again. You need to create time for your children. This is very important. We are working so hard. We're investing back to our country. You find one leg is in America and one leg is in Kenya. And this creates confusion actually to our spouses at home because they don't know they don't have a future in you. They don't know what you're thinking. If are you going to go back to Kenya or Nigeria after a couple of years? Are you gonna stay? So there is that tension in between the homes because they don't know if you are part of her. She has made up her mind and she wants to stay here. Again, also our kids, they get confused up again. I remember also has a father and also has a member of the Anoka Hennepin School Foundation Board. I stress a lot, and I'm going to say this: fathers, immigrants who are there, it's very, very, very important you get involved with your kids' education. You have to go to school. You have to go visit them during lunchtime. You have to follow up on the homework. On my part, every Sunday in my house, I have to make sure that me and my wife will sit down and we value and you look at their homework and you get your grades up. And if they're struggling, I can be able to contact the teachers. And they have resources also. Here they have resources. Everything is there. Again, I want to talk about family time. Family time is very, very important. I tell fathers these things, and men who are listening to me and people who are in diaspora, you can create time for your wife, and wife can create time for you. Number one is very easy. On your day off, take your spouse to work. Leave one car, use that car. Try to get her to work and pick up in the evening. Secondly, when you wake up in the morning, you're going to church. Take showers together. You're keeping that love together. There's so much going on. Try to be together. Even taking that shower time, even 5 minutes, it adds value to that marriage. Even the kids see that. Oh, they're like, oh man, my dad and my mom, I know they argue, but they still love because we want to keep these kids in a socially in a emotionally environment where they are to be good leaders for the future, and they need to be psychologically prepared, and we have to do that. Again, we have to navigate. We have to change the way we do things. How my dad raised me is different. My dad raised me, kitchens for women. It's different now. I have to support my wife. When my wife's working second shift, I have to be there. I have to make sure there's food on the table. When we are doing when you're saving money, again, men and women, I tell this is very important. Listen to me. Have 3 accounts. You can have your own account. You can have our own account and have a family account whereby you pay your bills so that everything there is transparency. There is transparency. If you're paying rent, if you're paying mortgage, if you're paying a car, there is transparency. Again, I'm going to stress, you're sending money. If I send money to my mother in Kenya, I have to send my money. I have to send the same amount of money to my father-in-law back in Kenya. And you'll never have problem in your marriage. You never had problem in your home. You know, if my brother asks me money, that's different. But if you're sending money to your parents, okay. And if my brother asks me for money or my sister, I have to tell my wife, I want to support my brother. How much money can I give? And I tell my wife, you know what? You send the money because there is more accountability for that. She sends the money, and when it comes for my wife, they know, oh, they have already spoken. So, man, I want to go back to you again. Again, we talked about cultural humility. We have to, when we have to talk, have a fatherhood buddy. You are stressed in your life. I'm stressed. I have a fatherhood buddy. I'll talk to Odua. I'll call Odua sometimes. And Odua like joking a lot, you know. And I make that, I need that, you know. I have some other men I call him. So what can we have a phone call and just talk? Let me know what's going on. And through marriage issues, key point, talk to another man. I can find you resources, even divorce resources here. You don't even need a lawyer. Let me tell you one thing. You don't even need a lawyer. You know, we can fight this and we can go through many things. Again, our social life. Man, we think about soccer. We think about politics in our African countries. We are so, we get distracted in our home. You know, even going to church, you're sitting down and you're watching soccer, a game which is played in Europe, instead of just accompanying your wife, accompanying your kids, and going to church together. Believe me, these small things, they add value in the marriage. But if you don't do it, our spouses, we're going to let them down. We're going to let them down. And they're going to leave because they can't wait for us. They have said enough is enough. And unless we change our mindset and we work with your wives and the community, we can move together. I believe we can go somewhere. And lastly, I want to say to all men again, I'm sorry, this is the last one. I know I have so many resources for men. Again, reach out to your community leaders. You have, when you go out there, when you gossip, never ever gossip about your family, never ever gossip about your wife. And that is I've seen it in our communities. We talk about your wife, talk about this. If you have something you want to gossip around, have a fatherhood buddy, one person who can maybe listen to you, can give you advice, and can be able to make you move on. Thank you so much, Dr.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Odua, you know, 1 minute quickly on that. You want to add on that as we finish?
Okay. You know, everything Mr. Wangi said, Dr.
Everything Mr. Wangi said.
Oh, should I? Okay. Everything Ahmed said, in my opinion, begins with wellness. We've talked about wellness here already today. We've talked about awareness. Your well-being is very, very important because that is where you set your priorities. Priorities means what matters to you. Out of what matters to you, you develop your coping strategies, which is either positive or negative. How you relate to people, how you act, or how you behave. If you are not well, none of these things matters. You may try to maneuver as much as you can. It's not going to be as if you are well. I don't think there's any man, any woman who wants to intentionally destroy their. I mean, you'll be pressed out to find that. However, when there are issues or when there are underlying issues unaddressed or undiagnosed, none of these things will place. Watching soccer that was played in Europe rather than going to church. At that moment, that's his priority. What is the coping skill? Then let me drink alcohol, whatever. I don't think these guys really, or these people really do these things as a way to, they just do it subconsciously. Another good coping method, I think, there one game I met before, a lot of men talk as men. We talk as men, we eat, we drink, we talk as men. That is very helpful. Becomes a way for you to release those tensions. And some also reference going to the leaders in the community. Please, people come to you. Be fair. in your assessment, in your whatever, be fair. Don't take side. Don't support the man because he's your cousin. Don't support the woman who's your niece. Be fair, because the goal is the stability of this family. Because we are talking about to be the unit is the nuclear unit of the community. So whether community leader as service provider, please be fair. Don't be judgmental. Oh, somebody's wife come to you. My husband has been drinking for the. Oh, my husband is also. No. These two different cases. Don't put them together. Be fair. Be respectful. Make sure whatever information they share with you stays you and not the third party. That is why even in hospitals there's the rule of information. I cannot share information with you unless the individual, the client, permits me to do that. So Dr. Nee made mention of a gossip syndrome. That's the reasons that people don't want to. What if I share with them, somebody hears about it? Those situations unfortunately, to me, those things can be avoided. It can be avoided. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some mental health element or untreated mental health illnesses. We don't have to get the way you can prevent these things before it gets to that point. So use your resources against what your candidates running is. We'll be back again next time. Thank you, guys.
Luckiest man on the panel, Dr. John Gibson Keeper from Monrovia. My brother in Liberia, do you want to say the last word on the same? Do we have John? Okay, it appears that we do not have John, and I think out of Dr. Oni, last word.
My last word on this topic is, again, we need to make sure we have awareness, we have training, we have education, we have outreach, and we also change our system. We need to change ourselves. We need to adjust. We need to make sure that everything we talk about today, we can also practice it by making sure we talk to individuals about this. We also need to know, in conclusion, that mental illness is like any other type of physical health. It's not different from cancer. It's not different from diabetic. It's not different from having a headache. So you can have a temporary distress. That doesn't make you mentally ill. And we also need to look at people as people, not as their illness. So we have to be people-centered. We need to be person-centered. We need to talk about them in the way. We may say somebody that is experiencing mental health. We don't need to call them mentally ill person. We need to also use people's language that will help. We also need to be careful with what we say to people and how we pathologize people, meaning we cannot say this person is mentally ill because we don't know that. And a lot of time when people do certain things, we need to make sure, ask them questions. If you were to be in Nigeria and something like this happened to you, what will you do? That way, what the American system is not doing is it's not asking you questions. They are afraid to ask you. You know Minnesota nice, okay? Minnesota nice. Also, Minnesota is cold, but I'm not talking about the weather. So what we said makes it different. How we look at mental health, we need to look at it as holistic. We need to look at it as spiritual. We need to look at it as anything you can think of. Some people get their relief from different ways and different approaches. So give them options as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Panelists, I think that marks the end of our discussion today. And I want to first begin by thanking the panelists, and apologies to the viewers for us coming live late, and I think in part because of our poor connection from Liberia. But first, I want to thank all the participants here. I want to thank more than enough Mr. Odua Money. The Kenyans are liking your name, by the way. Thank you so much for coming on. Your participation has been very insightful. We appreciate it. And by the way, for the viewers, Mr. Odua is running for a political office in the Putin Park area. I urge all Africans in Brooklyn Park, please, Brooklyn Center, let's join in arms and make sure we have this gentleman in office, whether it's financial, whether it's in terms of logistics. I promise I'll be there in your campaign to make sure that you are there. So that way, only by so doing, we'll be able to drive the political agenda. Dr. Oni is making a point there. Dr. Oni, are you making a point? We can't hear Oni.
Yes. Before you go, every year, every July, we have what we call African Mental Health Summit. This is going to be the 6th African Mental Health Summit, and it's coming up next week, this week, Friday, July 10th. And the Eventbrite is out. If you have opportunity, usually it's about 300 to 250 people every year. Last year it was at Minneapolis Institute of Arts, and we had 3 people that came from outside the country, from South Africa, from Nigeria, to present. So this is coming up. I will send out information if anyone is interested. It's not free, unfortunately. The free scholarship, we gave 70 scholarship, and it was done in 4 hours. So good luck.
So again, thank you, my friend Odua, and then I want to thank you, Sam Wangi. Thank you very much. I think what you've done here, every time I talk to any African person within Minnesota area, they talk about Sam Wangi. It's all about fatherhood. Thank you for the good work you're doing for the community. We'll continue to support you, and we'll reach out to you, and obviously we'll be very happy to welcome you back to the show. I also want to thank my friend Dr. John Gibson, who braved the communication problems all the way from Monrovia, Liberia, to join us in the conversation. Thank you very much for staying on. And I also want to thank, as always, Dr. Oni. I think everybody in Minnesota knows who Dr. Oni is for the wonderful, wonderful work you're doing. We don't have to call you individual, but just know that from behind the scenes, a lot of people, including myself, we appreciate the good work you're doing. And I will always welcome you to the studio here to have conversations revolving all Africans. I also thank Ben, who is working from behind the scenes, and his crew, and his son particularly, who is working very, very hard. I'm sure the little man is going to take over from the daddy. He's the guy who's making sure that this screen comes live to you in a very safe way. So my little boy, my little nephew, thank you so very much, and keep your dad going. Make sure that he's safe, right? Make him very proud. Also, I want to thank all the viewers who have joined in today, whether it's from Minnesota, across the state, and those ones who are able to join us from different parts of Africa. Thank you for joining this conversation. Again, as we've said here on KDRTV, this is not just a particular country's issue. This is pretty much all about driving a positive diaspora narrative. I think regardless of the painful moments that we're going through, we need at some point, and particularly this point, we need to raise up, go beyond the geographical boundaries that divide us, whether you are Kenyan, Nigerian, South Africa. It doesn't matter from where you are from across Africa. At this point in history is a moment that we need to turn the page and start talking as one people. Only by so doing shall we be able to resolve some of these problems we have in our society. And again, as the men have spoken here, we need to be as positive as possible. I think history puts it very clear. Anytime we go through difficulties, whether it's you as an individual, as a collective entity, as a society, that's when we do start thinking critically. And I'm a professor, I teach critical and creative thinking. What I always tell my students, it's only during that moment of failure. Failure is a good thing. Whenever things are not going okay for you, you should be very proud of it. Why? Because that's an opportunity for you to do very personal self-reflection. Is an opportunity for you as a family to do reflections as a family, and then collectively as a community, and particularly as the diasporans here in the United States, is a moment for us to get over ourselves, get to the front line, and have very constructive conversations as we've had here. And only by so doing shall we be able to socially grow, economically grow, and more importantly, so that we can engage ourselves in the political process. And I think you've had one of our panelists here, our brother Odoa, and many other brothers and sisters who are running for political offices. If we're able and united, then we'll be able to have them in political positions, and that's when they can change policy. Otherwise, we'll be talking, and we'll get tired. So again, one more time, I want to thank you all the viewers for tuning in. We're very proud to be with you again. We'll be back next week. Obviously, on Thursday, we have another conversation. And next week, we're having another very interesting panelist we're going to discuss, among other issues that are affecting the immigrant community here again. Thank you very much on behalf of the entire KDL TV crew here. Thank you, and have a good afternoon and nice week ahead. All right. Ben, are we done? Ben, are we done? Oh,
Yes, we are done.
Ben, are we?
We are done now.
Oh, we almost.
We are
Oh,
done.
thanks, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Bye.
Welcome,
Thanks, guys.
welcome.
Bye now.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very
You
much.
guys, you're
All
running to
right.
meetings. Thank you. We're heading to the campaign train now.
Thank you very much. You can give yourself marks and applause. You can put your hands together. You did a wonderful job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
What's
Okay.
up? Thanks. So, Ben, are we?
We are doing good, yes.
Sikwani?
Yeah, it was good.
It was
It was
longer
good.
though.
So next time, the best option we need to do is to ensure that our people actually log in one day early so that
You
it
think so?
becomes better.
I think so. That's why I always get nervous.
Yeah.
Like it's the African time, they're gonna log in, and then you're technical